everyone. Are you ready to be fired up? Because I sure am. I have got Ciorrocco, otherwise known as Mike Ciorrocco. He is an author. He used to be in the world of real estate. He was a lender back in the day and realized that there was a much easier way. And now he is making millions, not only in money, but he's actually impacting a lot of people. Here at a book we're going to talk about today. Mike, how are you? Good. Thank you for being on here.
Yeah, Krista, what's up, man? Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And, I'm always humbled that people want to hear me speak. I love doing it. I love pouring into people, but I'm very gracious.
No, I love interviewing people like you. I was on your podcast and we had a really, really great time. You're very good. In fact, let's tell everybody about your podcast because I want them to go follow you as well. What's the name of your podcast?
It's called The What Are You Made Of Show with Mike Ciorrocco on Spotify, Apple, and all those places. And we've done, I don't know, man, we might be 700 episodes, something like that.
700 episodes. So I've got some really questions, that I want to talk to you about. One of the things I know is you've been in the world of real estate. You understand. I think it's one of the most competitive jobs out there. You really need to have the right mindset. You're really focusing right now on like helping people like how to be more innovative and how to be unstoppable and how to have like the mindset to just get through anything. And I think that right now with the economy and the market that we're in, a large part of my audience, whether they're coaches and experts or whether they're realtors or lenders, need that. So can you talk to me a little bit about like what it is exactly that you teach and how do you think that, what you're doing, number one, as far as the mindset, like what tools and strategies people can adopt regardless of who they are to help them become more unstoppable?
Yeah. So first of all, I think everybody needs to understand that we've survived everything we've been through so far. And then every time we run into a certain thing that comes up, whether it's the economy, whether it's an industry, whatever, okay, relationship, we feel like it's the end of the world. And guess what? As long as you don't die, you got the opportunity to continue to learn from it and go. And what I believe from growing up in a lot of brokenness is I found that every time I'd go into something and it would seem like a setback or seem like the end of the world, I look back on my life when I got to about 40 years old and I started to realize that how did I keep elevating from those things? And I found that I had this concept I created called the rocket fuel law, which was take everything that comes your way, good or bad, and store it in your tank instead of your trunk. Because most people store the stuff in their trunk, especially the bad stuff, and it weighs them down and slows them down. So I started figuring this thing out that I was doing at a young age where I was taking things and storing it in my fuel tank and converting it into rocket fuel and becoming unstoppable, using it for knowledge, information, motivation, energy, whatever it took. But everything is energy that can be converted to whatever your intention is. So I started to realize this. And so now I'm not perfect. I've gone through a transition recently. Like you said, I'm out of the mortgage business for a year now and not making the amount of money that I'm used to making right yet, but I'm building to that. And it's taken a lot of, I got to practice what I preach. I'm going through the same stuff. I have ups and downs. Like some days I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And other days I'm like, yes, we got this. But it's a normal journey. I want everybody to understand it's a normal journey when you're going towards something big. And so that's a little bit of the message. I can dive deeper into the stories of some of the things I've been through. Be happy to share so people can relate.
What I love about you, and I want to tell you guys all something, like he's really much who he says he is. So first of all, I love the fact that you're like, hey, I'm starting this new journey. And like some days, because I know I'm there with you, you've got the good days and you got the bad days. Like, what the heck am I doing? And the last time when I was on your podcast, I was not in the normal mindset that I am. And I was like, oh God, Mike, I just had, one of my main people, was leaving. It was like, there was just a lot going on. I was like, and you were like, are you okay? You want to redo this? I'm like, no. And honestly, I don't even really remember what I was having a bad moment because I'm very similar to you. I just kind of like plow through it. But you do go through ups and downs. And I like the fact that you are even honest about, that you're on a new journey. It isn't always easy. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Like, That is so true. And most people don't ever admit that. They just, all you see is the glamour and the glitz and the podcast. So thank you for being honest about that. I mean, truly.
Yeah. Well, look, I think for me, being authentic helps more people. And one of the things as I grew into growing my brand globally and becoming an influencer, whatever you want to call it, celebrity in my space, okay? I think it's important to become a celebrity in your space if you're trying to make impact, for impact, not ego. But as I did that, I always didn't want people to I never wanted somebody to run into me in person and be disappointed with what they saw on social media or on podcasts. So authenticity is important to me. Now, like there's times where things were great. When I was in the mortgage business, we're crushing it. We have money and we're like, where do we put this money? And we're like having parties and investing it and doing all kinds of different things, and then never thinking that it was going to stop. And then going to a time where we're in the real estate now, where a lot of people are dealing with lower inventory. The interest rates are through the roof compared to where they were. You know, all the different things, the comp plan thing with the buyer's agent, all that stuff that's coming out, right? Like, this stuff is going to happen. Things are cyclical, right? So I'm in a position now where I decided to get out of the business before it got bad. Okay. 5 years ago, I decided to create an exit strategy. I went through 2020. It was the best year ever in the mortgage industry. Still held true, because I realized that this was going to come in the market. It's always a cycle. I didn't want to deal with it again, like I did in 2008. And number two, AI is coming out. And I truly believe, based on what I know and the data I see, that AI is going to take the place of loan officers. And so I was like, because the loan officer's job really is marketing and qualifying and then chasing documents. Well, all this stuff can be done with AI now. So eventually that's going to be an obsolete position. I know that for a fact. People are denying it. So I'm like, I'm getting the hell out of here. Now, Krista, when I did this, okay, I'm making a certain amount of money. I have a certain lifestyle. I'm not lavish, okay, by any means. I have a nice house on the water, 2 kids, beautiful wife, but I'm used to a certain lifestyle. So now I have to figure out, okay, when I made this transition from the mortgage business to starting a company called That One, which is an agency where we help people get booked on top podcasts, I had to figure out, okay, do I want to sacrifice my lifestyle and pull it back? Or do I want to sell assets while I'm building revenue? Because we have to build revenue and then reinvest in the company. Do I want to sell assets and then use that money to live off of, or pull my lifestyle back, or a combination? I had to figure all this stuff out. This is stuff that while I'm doing it, I feel like I'm by myself. I feel like I'm alone. I feel like I'm letting people down. My wife, I'm asking them to sacrifice. And it's not a always fun situation. And it's lonely as shit. But,
True.
you know, I just tell myself every day, like, and we make progress. We've had record months. We're building that again. And I know where I'm going. But I keep telling myself every day, just keep going. Just keep going. And it works eventually.
It does. And you know what's funny is, like, for me, I mean, I have learned, and you know, people talk about this that are successful, right? We all, let me make sure my thing is, successful people all will tell you the same thing. It's about being consistent. It's about never giving up. It's about keeping the mental framework. And for me, like, I'm always saying, when I have the hardest months, which I have, like, I'm like you, I'm in the industry where I'm helping real estate agents and they're having a very hard time. I've never heard so much in my coaching program when I talk to people that they're getting second jobs. I'm like, no, learn how to do this. But it's been a rough time, including for me. And I'll just tell myself something big is going to happen. Like, I'm about to have the biggest explosion in every which way in my life, because it's been so hard. So I train my brain to think like that, you know, like, it's okay. You're on the, like, don't give up. In fact, recently one of my team members said, she was listening to a billionaire, and he basically said that one of the biggest mistakes that he sees people making, like, they just give up when they're on the brink of explosion. And like, if he sees it over and over again, then people give up and they stop when they're on the brink of explosion. And I see the same thing.
3 feet from gold. That's a story in Think and Grow Rich, 3 feet from gold.
Correct.
And it's true. I think the thing is that sometimes people don't understand. Well, I mean, like, when do you know that you got to keep going versus, like, it's not the right thing, right path you're on too? So there's a variable there as well.
It's true.
You know, I had this thing the other day, like, you know, I want our revenue for our company. Okay. When you build a company, a startup, you want to build revenue, but you can't build revenue faster than and beyond where you can build your systems to be able to handle fulfillment. So here I'm pushing. I'm like, build some revenue. And then jam my team. And my team is like, dude, what are we supposed to do with all this in this amount of time that we have? And I'm like, I don't care. Let's get it done. So we got to create systems and process. So we have to scale effectively or it'll come crumbling down. So I start thinking to myself, well, if that's the case and I can't build that revenue fast enough, I got to figure out another revenue stream, right? But that can take your attention off of what you're building. So there's a fine line between pushing that revenue number and then also, look, sacrifice for the period of time while you're building this, because you cannot give birth to an adult, right? You got to have a baby's got to be a baby. A tadpole has to be, a frog has to be a tadpole first, you know? And sometimes I don't have that patience, Krista. I don't know about you. So I've developed this thing called patient urgency, where I am urgent with the things that I'm okay being urgent with. I need that works, but I got to be patient with the process, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about like some of your personal setbacks that have like kind of you would say would have helped really fuel your success. And I think that a lot of people, they see successful people and they only see, and like Facebook is called fake book, right? Like all you see is good, and it's so, and especially now the world's made up of so much phoniness. Like people want real. Talk to me about some of the setbacks that you've had that you feel have really kind of actually helped fuel your success.
Yeah, the earliest one I can remember, I came from a broken family. I don't remember my parents together. I did the every other weekend thing, the child support custody battles, adding step parents into the mix, then half sisters and step brothers and sisters. And I was the oldest of 8 kids, but none of them were my full brother or sister. And so, in doing that, there was a lot of conflict. My, mom and stepmom had problems. Like it was just, everybody had problems, conflict, chaos. And I was growing up in this. I thought this was normal. And so I started to make decisions and create belief systems surrounded around the environment that I was in. And so I remember when I was about 8 years old, my mom was moving on to her 3rd marriage, and I didn't want to move into another man's house. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to move into my dad's. My dad talked me into it. He took me out to dinner to this nice Italian restaurant, told me I was going to get a puppy, a waterbed. A waterbed was cool back then. A waterbed, my own room, all this stuff that I didn't have where I was at my mom's. And so I bought into it, told my mom I'm moving. She let me go. She later told me that she used to cry herself to sleep at night because I was her oldest. But I moved, and then my dad got married. He was on his 2nd marriage. And I moved into this house, and it was good at first. But eventually it started to get rough because my dad and my stepmom would fight. And then I would have to hear things that I shouldn't hear as a kid. I heard threats. I was scared. I would sleep with my baseball bat at night. It was just... but there were some good times, but then the bad things were really bad. And so I started getting this anxious, nervous feeling, and I would go to my mom's on the weekends and then come back. And on the way back, I'd usually get sick in my stomach because I was just like, I don't want to go back there. And eventually my mom found out after about 3 years, 2 years into the house, she started realizing there was something wrong. And I told her what was going on. And when she said, she couldn't believe it. And when I told her, she's like, I'm going to file court papers to get you out of there. And you got to stick with your guns on wanting to leave here because they're going to try to talk you out of it. And so she filed court papers a couple weeks later or months. I don't know how long it took exactly, but I came home from school one day and my dad had these papers in his hand. Now I was waiting for these things to be delivered, right? So this was something that was coming. And I felt when I walked in the house that the tension was thick. And my dad was a bricklayer, mason. He had his own business, big forearms and rough hands. Like if you shook his hand, you could tell he was a hard worker. He used to carry a wad of $100 bills around in his pocket all the time. And I used to look up to him for that. He used to show us $100 bills and how hard he worked for it. That was a belief system, by the way. That was a belief system that was implanted in me. I just realized this just now, that you have to work hard for money. That is not true, but I'll get to that later. So I had this image of my dad of my hero. Now he sent me back to my room when he had these court papers in his hand, and he came back to the room finally after I was sitting there for a while. And he said, "It says here you want to move back with your mom. I can't understand this. You have everything you need here. Got it made. Your mom has men coming in and out of the house. She doesn't have any money. You don't go on trips, whatever. And you're going to move back there?" And I said, "Listen," and I'm 10 or 11 at this time. I said, "I'm not discussing this. I made my decision. I want to leave." And in the back,
The fact that you had that young is really admirable.
yeah, I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm like, what the heck did I just do? What atomic bomb did I just set off? Yeah. It's like a whistleblower in a company that they know they should share what's going on at this company something's bad here, but they don't do it. And then when they finally do it, they're like, oh, geez, my life's in danger. I had that feeling as an 11-year-old. So he said, okay, that's what you want. So he took the wad of $100 bills he used to carry around with him all the time. He peeled one off, he crumpled it up, and he threw it at me. And he said, "Here, you're going to need this then when you're living on the streets with your mother one day." And I at the kid, that's what I was like, I can't believe I just did this. I can't believe he just did this. I'm not going to need that money. And I just remembered that moment looking back that I was like, I'll show you. I'm not going to need that money. I'm going to prove him wrong. So maybe that's not good motivation, but it was a motivation I used for 30 some years. I drove off of, because if everything went to shit, I was like, I can't lose. I can't let him win. I can't need that $100 bill. And then when things were going good, Krista, I was like, oh, we got to take it to another level. We got to take it to another level because I'm not going to go back and need that money. And so that's where the rocket fuel law came in, because when I was 40, I started to really assess my life and realize what had happened. And there's other experiences like that in my life that I've been through that I continue to use this process.
So talk about that. So like, what are some of the key traits that should help to help people develop the success like that you've had, and that that you see other successful people having based upon your book. And talk about your book Rocket Fuel as well. Like show it. I know you're show the book, and I want to how can people learn more about that as well? Just because so we don't lose anybody, I want to make sure they learn about that.
Yeah, the book's on Amazon. You can get it wherever you find books. It's a great read. It's not real thick, but it's a great read. It tells about the story about when I was a kid and going through all that in more detail. And then also my mentorship journey once I started to realize what was going on in my life. And I had the balls to ask Grant Cardone to write the foreword, and he said no to everybody else, but he wrote it for this book. And it's a great story of overcoming and understanding how to perform better and not let things stop you. Now, I don't know if this is healthy, okay? But a lot of successful people come and overachievers come from the fact that they're trying to prove somebody something. They're trying to prove somebody wrong. They're trying to, and maybe that's okay. I think that's important to use if it's there, but there's a point in time where you got to get to the point where you find out really who you are. You stop living for someone else's dreams. You stop living for someone else's goals to prove somebody wrong. And you start realizing, who the hell am I? And when you start to realize who you are, that comes down to what your standards are, what your non-negotiables are, what dream life do you really want to live? And then what is your mission? And then what it allows you to do, Krista, for me is I get off of that thing where I'm trying to prove my dad wrong. I'm trying to do that, which is great for a period of time. But once I found out who I am and I can lean into it unapologetically, not worrying about what my abusive stepmother says to me, and using the word, you're pathetic. I didn't even know what pathetic was as a kid. I was called pathetic. I knew it was a bad word because of the way she was saying it, but not feeling that about myself and knowing who I am and leaning into it. And that sets you apart from everybody. So every real estate professional, coach, consultant that's out there that you work with, Krista, right now, if they haven't done this already, and you've done a great job with this, they really should take some time to assess who the heck you are, what your mission is, what your values are, what you want out of life. Get really clear on that, and then start making decisions that go towards that, not away from it. It leads to an opportunity to create binary decisions towards or away, building or destroying, and it gets rid of a lot of chaos and confusion that's all around us. And so I really like to focus on thoughts, words, actions, and environment, the people that are around me, go towards who I am, not away from who I am. And that helps everything. It just makes everything better.
It all sounds, I feel like as you're talking, I'm listening to myself, because I say almost all the same things that you're saying. And I believe it's so true, just as far as your thoughts, it isn't even the thoughts, but the thoughts create a feeling, right? And that feeling creates the action. It's based upon your thinking, creates this thought, that the thought creates a feeling, and that feeling is going to say, oh, I feel like doing it or not. So you have to be so conscious of what your thoughts are, because those thoughts create a feeling of inaction or action, and that's what creates the result in your life. So it's so important to really focus on what you're saying. And I love what you're saying about, really getting crystal clear on where you want to go, who you are, and every single decision that you're making gets based upon that. And I think I love about how you're saying that you're utilizing things that are happening in your life, both good and bad, as fuel, as decision making, as not identifying it, oh, this is a bad thing, this is a good thing, but as parts that are going to help you go to, okay, this happened to me. How do I analyze this now? What do I learn from it? How do I adjust from it? And then how do I move forward? Not oh my God, poor me, life is horrible, everything sucks. I think a lot of people, they just get paralyzed with life and situations,
Listen, it happens to the best of us. I mean, I had a bad week last week myself personally. I was just in a funk, and I'm like, this is not me. And that's a good thing about it, is because once I know that I can get out of it, know what the deal is, I can fight it to get out of it. And I don't just stay in it. I know if staying in it. By the way, so for people out there listening, this is important, okay? When you are in a high emotional state, everything works out for you. When you're in a low emotional state, nothing works out for you. And it has a lot to do with perspective, your perspective of what's going on. It could be actually working out for you, but you don't see it that way when you're in a lower emotional state. But it also has to do with your energy that you're putting off to other people and how they respond to you. See, a confident person turns hearts for them. The world will turn towards you when you're confident. When you're lacking confidence, shrivels hearts up. They'll shrivel up and move away from you. As you start to realize these facts, you start to be able to say, okay, if that's the case, I cannot let myself stay in this state. I got to get out of this state, because I know if I get out of this state, everything's going to work out for me. And so these are this kind of, and so I'm human too. I don't want people to think when we're doing these podcasts and followers are watching us and whatever, audience, like, oh, they got it made. They just don't understand me. No, I understand you. I've been broke before. I've had money before and I've lost it all before. And I climb back again. And I've been in the darkest spots. I've partied. I've done drugs. I've done alcohol, drinking alcohol, all that kind of stuff. Okay. I've been all these places. I've had trouble in my relationships. I've had people screw me over and steal money from me. You know, I've been through all this stuff. So just everybody know, like, I want to know that I know where you are, know where you've been. Okay. I've had people around me, unfortunately, like, end their lives. Like, I've seen it all. Okay. But what I've learned in these things I'm sharing, Krista, and with your audience, is these principles, they work.
You know, it's funny too, Mike, is like people, like I've been on a couple panels, right, or speaking events, and they'll have like various speakers, and typically they're successful people, and oftentimes they don't tell us what to talk about, or they're like, hey, talk about what got you to be successful. And I mean, the last one I was at, I was like, my gosh, it looks like everyone almost said the same thing, even though we didn't know we were all going to say the same thing, and it's the same thing. So many people take it for granted. They take for granted how important it is what you say to yourself, the thoughts that you have, how those thoughts create your actions, like being consistent, like identifying a goal, being laser specific, making sure every action that you do aligns with that. It's not rocket science. Everyone tells you the exact same thing. It's a matter of doing it. I think so many times people are like so tired of hearing it because it's so, you know, what's the word, like overplayed, or that's what, but that's what really is what it is. Like it's so true. So true.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. I'm a firm believer in God. And then when I started studying quantum physics and quantum resonance, I started realizing that there's a connection with science and spirituality, which people used to think they're separate. You can't believe in science, but be a Christian or whatever. You can't. No. You start to realize this power that God has given us to cause and create has to do with the way particles react on a quantum level. It's amazing once you start to realize and study this stuff, how they're linked. And so I believe we're created by an all-powerful God to create ourselves, okay? And I can't not talk about this because some people say, oh, you just don't have religion. Listen, I believe in something that works. I've seen it, and I have to share it with people. If they don't want to take it, that's up to them. But if we're put here, created in the image of an all-powerful God, in the image of that all-powerful God, that means that we're creators. So our job is to create, and the determination of what we create is our intention. And so I cannot wake up in the morning and be okay with myself serving an all-powerful God and create bullshit. Okay? I got to create magic. I got to create wonders. I got to continue to always do better. I got to help people and pour into people and elevate people. If not, then I'm not serving who I say I'm serving.
You know what I love about you too is like like the best compliment I can ever get when somebody tells me, I love your energy, Krista. Like I'm like, thank you. Like you have very good energy. Like for those of you that are listening and not watching, hopefully you can hear it in his voice, but he's just got this positive, infectious energy about him. It makes you want to be around him. It makes you want him to succeed. And you know, that just modeling that aspect of successful people is such a huge thing. And so based upon what you're saying about, you know, you were created by God and all these things, and like you can't help but want to shine like him, right? And do those things. You can see it in the way that you live your life. And I'll just remind that the last time I was on Mike's podcast, like I said, I was having kind of a bad moment. He's like, hey, he was like, how can I help you? What do you need? Or like, he's like, let's just cancel the podcast. And I'm like, no, we're still doing it. But he was all about trying to help me. So, you know, and so he really is true about what he says, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I really appreciate that about you. Okay, Mike, this has been amazing. Again, I want you to tell people where they can find your book, how they can learn more about you. I know that you also, hold on really quickly, let's spend a couple minutes here. I know that you help people get booked on podcasts. And tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so I've been on over 1,000 podcasts as a guest in the last 5 years. It's changed my life. I started seeing the power of it, not just the content production, not just leveraging other people's audiences, but the show host connection, the networking that came from that, and the introductions that came from that. It has allowed me to be on stages and hang around people that I could have never imagined that I watched on TV before, right? I'm in a green room with people that are just in the news every day, you know, and I just can't help myself but help people when I figure something out. So everything we do in our business that works, we start a business around it. That one agency, that one brand came from helping people become that one, identifying who they are, differentiate yourself, lean into it unapologetically. And then we connect them with great, I mean, I'm talking about some of the top podcasts out there that align with what level they're at, what their brand is. And then we change lives. The connections that we make besides the podcast is amazing. So that's the number one agency.com. Go check it out. And that's where I'd love to send people if they're interested in getting on podcasts, having those connections that we have, and then also having our guidance. That's what it's all about.
That's awesome. Okay. So it's called
That1agency.com.
That1agency.com. That1agency.com. So go there to learn more about that. And then also show me your book and then mention your podcast as well. Because your podcast
all right. The awesome. What Are You Made Of show, Spotify, Apple, and then Rocket Fuel Convert Setbacks, Become Unstoppable on Amazon. Check it out. Yeah. By the way, Krista,
I'm telling you, I like who you are.
Thank you so much. But yeah, look, I made it so that people can find me easy. So just look up Mike Ciorrocco on Google. Google me.
Mike Ciorrocco. Google.
Let's go. Thanks for having me.
And oh, you're welcome. Really quickly, I always have everyone do this. If you want to give one piece of advice, business, personal, relationships, one piece, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it really is like stop identifying with what you're doing. Your identity should not be what you do. Your identity is who you are. What you do is your vehicle, and start treating it that way. Because that way, when that vehicle crashes, has a flat tire, runs out of gas, you can get out of that vehicle and your identity's not attached to it and your identity doesn't crash. It's a very bad thing to be in. Professional athletes, veterans, super successful business people tie their identity to what they do. And when that thing crashes or slows down, their identity does too. And I don't want people to do that. So find out who you are, identify your mission, and then use what you do to be your vehicles to get to where you need to go.
I've never heard anyone say that, and I love that ending. Okay, everyone. Mike, that was awesome. Everyone, I hope you are just as fired as I am. Remember, learning is not power. Implementation is. And so I will see you on the next Fired Up. Have a great day. Thanks so much for watching my video. You can learn more about how to be a successful real estate professional by watching other videos that I have. And be sure to subscribe to my channel. And as always, make it a great home selling and buying day.